Hello and welcome to my channel. In this video, I'm going to be doing the nostalgia book tag. I was tagged by BookBuds, so I will link out to their video, which was a lot of fun, as well as the original down below. But let's jump in. So this one's all, of course, about nostalgia, and so it's mostly about books that make you feel nostalgic for one reason or another. So the first question is the oldest book from your life that you still own. So I looked around because I don't still have most of the books that I had when I was a kid or like younger. I know a few of them popped into my head and I'm like, oh no man, I haven't had that in years. But I dug around and took a look and it looks like I believe the one that I've actually had, because there's at least one that I ended up buying again later. But the one that I still have is Mr. Monday by Garth Nix. It's the first book of the Keys to the Kingdom. And this is kind of a fantasy novel as well. And I don't really remember a ton about it. But this was always weird because I always knew Garth Nix had Spritual. And my library had that book, and for some reason I never read it. I don't know why. I always meant to, never did. But I have this one. It's even got like the Scholastic thing, so you know it's old. So this book was part of a series, and I never read the rest either because I didn't have access to them. But I still have this very first book that I probably got from like one of those like book order things in school too, even. So it's not in the best condition, but honestly, considering how long I've had this and how young I was when I got it, it's not bad. It's really not bad. I just mentioned the library, and speaking of the library, that is question number 2, which is the first library book that I loved. So, going back, the very first thing that pops out as a book I got from the library that I loved, I actually later got this collection of the Prydain Chronicles, and the one that I read was The High King, I'm pretty sure. Which actually, I'm pretty sure is the last one. I just reread this last year, I should know. Yeah, The High King is actually the last book in the Prydain Chronicles, but I know for a fact I had that one. I don't remember if I read the rest of them. I know I must have read some, because when I was reading this, parts of the Book of 3 were definitely very familiar. So I'm sure I read some of the others too, but specifically The High King was the first one I got, not realizing it was the last book in a series. And I remember the library had like a hardcover of it and everything, and I really, really enjoyed it. And until actually last year, I had not read this since I was in like first grade or so. So it was really cool going back and actually reading the whole thing. It actually held up pretty well, to be honest. There were definitely some issues, but considering it's a children's fantasy book series from the 60s, I expected much worse, and it was still pretty solid. So that was pretty nice. So then we have a book given to you is number 3. So there's lots of things that I can choose. The one, because since it's supposed to be like nostalgia, I was given, when I was younger, I was actually born lived in San Diego until I was about 9, and then moved to Iowa where I live now. And as I was leaving, one of my best friends gifted me a book, knowing I was a big reader, and it actually was Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix. Now the funny part is, I had not read any of the Harry Potter books at that time. And so I hadn't read any of them, but I did end up actually reading the book. It was the first Harry Potter book I read. This could be a reason why I was never a huge fan. I think there are others too, but I read several of them kind of out of order. And it was fine. I was never a huge Harry Potter fan. I know a lot of people were on the right age for it. It just wasn't really for me. But I ended up reading, like I said, most of the books at some point or another. But I was gifted that one, and so I actually hadn't thought about that in years either. So when I was doing this, I literally got like this. I was like, oh my gosh, yeah, I remember that. So that was pretty cool. All right, then question number 4, a book recommended to you. So I had to go here, of course, with just a random recommendation I got. I had started checking out all of the fantasy I could find. Like I said, Prydain, starting when I was very young, kind of really started that. But I always loved, I read a lot of retellings of Arthur, just all kinds of different stuff like that. And I decided to start going to the library and just basically getting everything I could. That's where I found Dragonlance. Some of the original Dragonlance Chronicles the library had. But somebody randomly told me one time, like, hey, you should check out this series called The Wheel of Time. And obviously, this is I've only had this recently, but I went and immediately got The Eye of the World and devoured it. And this I was in 6th grade, yeah, when I started reading it. And I read The Eye of the World. They only had The Eye of the World and The Dragon Reborn, which are books 1 and 3, is what my local library had. At least they had even the first one. That was something. But they only had the first and third books, so I ended up having to have them interlibrary loan all of them. They kept The Great Hunt. I will give them that. They kept The Great Hunt, so they had the 3. But I had them interlibrary loan each of the books for me, and so like I would finish it, I'd return it, I'd immediately have them give me the next, and just like wait like on the edge of my seat for however long it took me to get the next book. And that's how I read The Wheel of Time probably the first like 3 times at least. When I was younger, is I just was constantly getting the books and rereading them time after time. And so I absolutely love The Wheel of Time. And it wasn't until quite a lot later that I actually got my own hardcover set. So, I mean, even through high school, I still was using the local library to get the books. So I did quite a lot of them. I wish I would have just gotten a full set. It would have saved me a lot of time. But, you know, I couldn't control that. So, yeah, it is what it is. But that definitely, of course, ended up being, you know, still is one of my favorite series of all time. And just such a nostalgic read for me. Every time I reread, I remember just all kinds of different points. The first time I read it, just other times I read it. Nothing gives me quite as much nostalgia, which is why I was just actually saying the other day, I feel like there's so much nostalgia tied in. I've read it so many times. It's just such a deep love for The Wheel of Time. And Robert Jordan, it's going to be really hard for anything to ever displace that, even though I've read all kinds of stuff that's also amazing since. So number 5 is a buddy read. Now, this one I had to stretch just a little bit, but I think it still works. And that's because I didn't really know pretty much anyone who read for, you know, most of my life, especially when I was younger. Besides, the friend that gifted me the Harry Potter book, actually, so when I was really little, we would read together all the time. And it was like mostly like Magic Treehouse and stuff. And I remember in first grade, literally, we would sit in class and be reading Magic Treehouse books and like race to see who could finish them the fastest. Like, so, barring that, when I was like 6 years old, I haven't really known a ton of people who read, especially people who do, who actually read fantasy and read the same kind of stuff. So buddy reads were really something that I did not really do until being a part of BookTube. But the one that, even though it wasn't that long ago, still gives me nostalgia because it was kind of the start of everything with my channel, I had to go with American Gods by Neil Gaiman. And I've mentioned the story a few times on different videos, and there's still some people I'm sure who actually remember and were around. But I originally started a Discord because another booktuber, Rose K. Reads, who I don't think is active anymore, but she had just randomly found my channel and said, like, oh, we should buddy read something. We both have this on our list, and so we picked American Gods. Literally made a Discord just for that. I never really used Discord before. Created the Discord. And then shortly after that, actually I think it was probably right before that, is when Slowly Read had shouted out my channel, and so I got some subscribers for like the first time ever, because no one watched my videos. And then that Discord community ended up growing and growing. Later, of course, Andrew was actually one of the earliest people in the Discord too. Finally got him to start his channel, Andrew's Wizardly Reads. We ended up deciding to co-run the Discord, and the rest is history. And so all of you around in the Discord, which if you're not in the Discord, check the link in the description. Doing that early in this video. It's just such a great community. We have so many people. I've just met so many great people there, and it's always a fun time, and I barely remember a time when I didn't have the Discord. Even when it was just a few of us early on, it just so quickly became like a normal habit. So, even though that wasn't that long ago, I still most certainly have some nostalgia for that time, because it was just such a huge turning point with the BookTube community. Alright, so a book introduced to you in school. So I thought about this one because I never really cared for a lot of the books that I had to read in school. I would mostly like just read them like really quick and then read whatever the heck I wanted, because I was never allowed to read like The Wheel of Time for class. For whatever reason, they didn't like that. So, but I was trying to think what I ended up going with, because there were some, like, To Kill a Mockingbird was mentioned in the Book Buds video, and I didn't want to go with the same thing, but that was a good book. There were some others, I'm sure, too, that I read, but a lot of them were just kind of like, for at least the ones that I had assigned reading. One thing I did end up really liking, and I'm not a huge Shakespeare fan overall. It's really hit or miss for me, but I really enjoyed Othello. And then later after, because of that, I found out I really enjoy Much Ado About Nothing, and I've seen some adaptations of that, if I can talk, that I really liked too. So that was something that was definitely not my normal thing, but those two I actually really, really enjoyed, and Othello was specifically something that was introduced in some English class that I had, so I thought I would go with that one. So we have then number 7. That was number 6 if I didn't say that. I think I'm forgetting to say the numbers, but oh well. Number 7 is genre fiction that inspires nostalgia. So there's a couple things I can go here with. The first one I'll mention just because I got this recently. And this was 100% a nostalgia buy, and this is the complete Tales of Earthsea in this gigantic book here. I read The Wizard of Earthsea. It was another one. I'm not sure exactly how old I was, but it was another one that I just got from the library, either the school library or the local library. I actually don't even remember. Really, really enjoyed it, but I've actually never read the rest. So I'm so excited to get into this and bought this. I got a really good deal on it on Book Outlet for like the brief 5 minutes they had them there. But this was a complete nostalgia buy because I loved Le Guin's The Wizard of Earthsea a lot. I still actually remember it really clearly, despite the fact that I haven't read it in many, many years, and so that kind of, like, the fact that it stuck with me that much, I feel like just tells you how much I enjoyed it. So that's definitely one. And then otherwise, the other thing I could mention here, which they're slightly further away, I'm going to grab 2 of them, is the Bartimaeus trilogy. Specifically, these covers, not this stupid new cover, because I hate it. It was supposed to be the hollow cover, and it wasn't when I got it online. But these books were, for sure, I remember these were in my school library, and I read them and actually really enjoyed them. And this is like middle grade fantasy that takes place in Britain before the Revolutionary War, specifically. I don't remember what year, but it's before the Revolutionary War, because that's mentioned later as a thing that might happen. But I've also not read these in many, many years. I actually found a couple of them really cheap online, and then I ended up getting the first one too. I had to order from a different place, but I hadn't read them in so long, and I just remember the kind of weird holographic covers of these, and I remember it being pretty good, and so I'm really interested to get them, to get to them. They should be pretty quick to read through, and so it's still something I actually need to do. But I'm excited to read those as well, just because that will be something I'm sure that'll give me a lot of nostalgia. I remember reading it as well. So then we have literary work that inspires nostalgia. So for this too, because I don't read a lot of literary stuff for the most part, the big one, of course, would be The Count of Monte Cristo, which is over on the other shelf, and my really nice copy's not in the room either, so I'm not going to go get it. But The Count of Monte Cristo was something that I read on my own. Funnily enough, a lot of the classics that I ended up reading are things that I just chose to read. I didn't read that many of them. But Count of Monte Cristo is something that I decided to read on my own, and from there I read more Dumas, read The Three Musketeers, and one of the follow-ups I read too. And just so those, I did really, really enjoy. Count of Monte Cristo is just one of my favorite, like, standalone novels of all time too, as I've mentioned many a time. Whenever it comes up, because there are a lot of questions like that come up on tag videos. But so that one definitely, when I read it, I just remember reading it, and it's always something I enjoy each time. So number 9 is a spiritual text that inspires nostalgia. I don't really have an answer here. Like, I don't think I own any spiritual texts per se here. That's just not really the kind of thing that I read. So I'm cheating here again. And what I'm going to go with, which I will fully admit it's cheating, but I'm going to go with Mistborn, because a huge focus of the Mistborn trilogy is specifically discussing religions, how they work, how they're started, and just in general, a lot of the philosophy of religion, of different religions. So maybe not spiritual, but it's got a lot of religion discussion. And Mistborn I read Warbreaker first, is the first Sanderson I read, and then I immediately went into Mistborn, but oddly enough, I have a lot more vivid memories of reading Mistborn for the first time, because I was just like so sucked into it. I still have my old mass market paperbacks, which is what I originally had, and I just was reading them as fast as I can, going through, burning through them, and like I could barely put them down no matter where I went. I had those books with me, so I have a lot of vivid memories of that. It gives me nostalgia every time I go back and read Mistborn. So that is the nostalgia tag. Hey, it's Editing Nico here again, because once again I am incapable of remembering to mention the fact that I'm tagging people while filming my tag videos. So, for this one I am going to tag An Erudite Adventure, Owen Edwards, and Bright and Bookish are the 3 channels I'm going to tag. All 3 I've seen around the Discord. I know that post videos, and I don't think I've seen them do this one, so hopefully not, but I'm going to tag those 3. I will link their channels down in the description. Make sure to give the video a like if you enjoyed it. Check the link also in the description for not only those channels, but for the Wizardly Duo Discord. And of course, if you enjoy my content, make sure to subscribe.